Greetings, friends. Happy Monday, and welcome back to another Monday Muse, sponsored by the Performance Matters series and podcast. And Bob Mosher here. 5 moments of need, apply synergies. Hope these are helpful. Welcome back. The views have been pretty good. I really appreciate the comments and the dialogue throughout the week. That's the intent. So we're going to stay at these. Please let us know what you think. We want to make something that's worth your while amongst and amid all the noise. We know this out there in this world. So we're going to take a bit of a right or angle or 180 today on our Monday Muse because so much of this, understandably, is about performance first. It's about going from a training mindset to a performance mindset. It's about building a digital coach and for the workflow, the tasks we talked about last Monday Muse and such first. And then here comes train to the degree we need to. And so this particular session is going to be all about training. Sometimes I've been known as, and was once called, the training hater guy. Well, friends, that's the farthest from the truth. I adore training. I think the classroom is one of the most powerful mediums we have. I just think that we have been forced to have it do things it doesn't do well. The most important and probably the most difficult one is that we overteach. In the 43 years I've done this, and especially the first 20 of that, I overtaught because when I went into my SMEs and I went to design a solution, frankly, it was a training solution. It was a training deliverable. And we sat down in a room and guess what? My SMEs told me everything that I needed to teach. And it was everything. Because if you have training as the tip of the sword, everything is equally important. So here's the deal, friends. Sure they are. But the reality is, the question is, should everything be taught? And with workflow learning, task focus, critical impact of failure analysis, things we've talked about already, no, everything does not need to, nor here's most important, should be taught. Right? So we use this thing called targeted training. It's one of my favorite outcomes from this methodology. Right? And I would like to say and argue in the years that I've done this, decades, that I think workflow learning, of all things, saves the classroom. Because when you have workflow learning as your force deliverable, when you do digital coach as the first thing you design, when you understand every task, supporting knowledge, process, workflow map of what people do on the job, and you build to support that, training gets to step back and take a whole new view and intent to the performance journey. It becomes a place where safe failure, teaching people to fish, reducing cognitive load and only covering the things that are most critical and those that are not be learned while doing changes the power and the dynamic of the classroom. It changes the length, changes the footprint, and it also changes the nature in which we teach. So let's go into a couple of those. When we only teach the critical skills, friends, on average, we see half or more, often more of what we would have taught dropped. Now, when I say dropped, it doesn't mean skipped. What it means is because of how targeted training will go, you will be taught to find those things when you need them. And by the way, when learning is most powerful, when you're doing, when you're in the workflow and trying to get things done, apply, solve, and change. All right. But I have to build a architecture and scaffolding and a tool that can support you there. And that's what the digital coach is all about. But once I have that, the classroom just can let things go. And like we said, on average, be half the time. The other thing is the teach to fish thing, right? My concern years ago, friends, was covering everything. And particularly that really hard or sometimes boring lesson that nobody wanted to do, but it had to be covered because it was in the outline. When we do targeted training only on the critical skills, we can approach the classroom in a very different way and help people learn how to support themselves, elevate their self-efficacy, raise their courage to use a digital coach when they crash and burn or fail in the classroom, but find their way out of it. So we use a delivery approach called ramp up and ramp down with the digital coach in the background. What it basically means is it's a support dynamic, friends. When you ramp up, you're going to teach people to be self-reliant, use a digital coach. When you ramp down at the same time, you're going to take us as instructors, peers, other support material in the classroom out of the picture because they do not exist in the workflow, right? So we ramp up the learner's ability to support themselves throughout the class and learning experience while we ramp down their dependency on things that they don't have when they get back to work. and the digital coach shines. Now, another thing to be used in that dynamic is something called guided and unguided practices, because what I love about this model is there's a lot of practice because I don't have to do as much formal instruction. So in those practices, we use things called unguided and guided practices. Guided practices start the day. It's that ramp down part. People want structure. They want security. They don't know the digital coach yet. But as the day goes on, we ramp that down by going from guided to unguided practices, which frankly are more real life, more scenario based, that people will face in the workflow when they're working, and basically have to find their way out of that scenario by using the digital coach as their guide. So, although content's important, it is not king, friends, anymore. The king of the classroom is experience, learning while doing, raising my self-efficacy and courage to take things on in the workflow, and leaving with a high understanding of how the digital coach supports me to do that. Friends, I hope this has been helpful. Love to hear your feedback. Love to hear your ideas, your experience, and let's keep the dialogue going around an incredibly powerful discipline in the world of workflow learning. Thanks. Appreciate you. Hope these are helpful. Have a great week, friends.